They thought she was just an aggressive passenger who didn't belong in first class. They thought they could humiliate her, drag her off the plane, and laugh about it in the galley. But the flight attendant, Tiffany Gable, made one fatal mistake. That woman she just kicked off? She isn't just a passenger. She's the owner of the company that just bought this airline. And the pilot? He just locked the cockpit doors and killed the engines. Nobody is going anywhere until justice is served. Get comfortable because this karma hits harder than a crash landing. The chaos began with a click of a tongue. It wasn't a loud noise, but in the hushed, carpeted sanctity of the first-class cabin on Royal Meridian, Flight 404 from JFK to London Heathrow, it sounded like a gunshot. Serena Cross didn't look up from her iPad. She was busy reviewing the acquisition files for a merger that had been kept under wraps for 6 months. At 34, Serena was the founder and CEO of Nexus Dynamics, a global logistics firm that had quietly revolutionized how the world moved cargo. She was tired. Her blazer, a custom-cut piece from a tailor on Savile Row, was draped over the back of her seat. She wore a simple white silk blouse and black trousers. No jewelry, except for a small, vintage Cartier watch that cost more than most people's cars. But to Tiffany Gable, the senior purser of the flight, Serena looked like a glitch in the system. Tiffany adjusted her scarf, her eyes narrowing, as she scanned the manifesto on her tablet, and then looked back at seat 1A. Tiffany had been flying for 20 years. She prided herself on maintaining the standard of the first-class cabin. In her mind, the standard didn't usually involve women who looked like Serena, young, black, and dressed with a simplicity that Tiffany mistook for cheapness. "Excuse me," Tiffany said, her voice dripping with that distinct blend of polite condescension specific to customer service workers who have decided they dislike you. Serena finished reading a paragraph about liquid assets before looking up. She offered a tired but polite smile. "Yes." "I need to see your boarding pass again." Serena frowned slightly. "I already scanned it at the gate, and the flight attendant at the door checked it." "I understand that," Tiffany said, stepping closer, looming over Serena in a way that was meant to be intimidating. "But we have a discrepancy in our head count. I need to verify that you are actually in the correct seat. Economy is in the back, ma'am, row 30 through 55. The implication hung in the air, thick and ugly. Several other passengers, mostly older men in suits, glanced up over their newspapers. A man in 1B, a heavy-set guy named Marcus, who looked like he worked in oil, shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Serena pulled up the digital pass on her phone and held it out. Seat 1A, Serena Cross. Tiffany barely looked at the screen. She was looking at Serena's hair, her skin, the lack of ostentatious diamonds. "Digital passes can be glitched," Tiffany said dismissively. "Do you have the printed stub?" "No," Serena said, her voice hardening. "I travel paperless. Look, the plane is pushing back in 10 minutes. Is there a problem?" "The problem," Tiffany snapped, dropping the facade of politeness, "is that seat 1A is reserved for our global elite members. It's a full fare ticket costing $12,000. I've been working this route for a decade, and I know our clientele. I don't see your name on the priority list." "Check the manifest again," Serena said, her patience thinning. "And check the spelling. CROSS. Tiffany didn't check. She had already made up her mind. She had seen a standby passenger on the list, a Mr. Archibald Sterling, a frequent flyer she wanted to impress. She needed seat 1A open. And she had decided that Serena was the easiest target to move. "Ma'am, I'm going to ask you to gather your things and step off the aircraft to sort this out at the gate agent's desk," Tiffany said loudly. The cabin went silent. "Excuse me?" Serena laughed, a cold, sharp sound. I am not getting off this plane. If you do not comply, I will have you removed by security, Tiffany threatened, crossing her arms. You are becoming aggressive, and that is a federal offense. Aggressive? Serena stood up. She wasn't tall, but she had the presence of someone who commanded boardrooms filled with sharks. I am sitting in the seat I paid for. You are harassing me because you don't think I look like I can afford it. That is discrimination, and I suggest you walk away before you lose your job. Tiffany's face flushed red. She wasn't used to being challenged. She pressed the call button on her handset. Captain, we have a disruptive passenger in first. Level 1 threat. I need security to the jet bridge immediately. Serena shook her head, pulling out her phone. She dialed a number. Who are you calling? Tiffany demanded, reaching out as if to grab the phone. Serena pulled her hand back sharply. My lawyer, and then the CAO of this airline. Tiffany laughed. Honey, the CEO of Royal Meridian is Jonathan Hayes, and he doesn't take calls from people flying on fraudulent tickets. Security is on the way. You're done. Serena just stared at her, a strange calmness settling over her face. You're right. Jonathan was the CEO. As of this morning, things have changed. But Tiffany wasn't listening. 2 airport police officers, Officer Miller and Officer Davis, were already marching down the aisle, their faces grim. The sight of uniformed officers entering a first-class cabin always triggers a primal reaction in passengers. It's a mix of fear and voyeuristic excitement. Phones came out instantly. That's her! Tiffany pointed a manicured finger at Serena. She's refusing to leave the seat. She's belligerent, and she threatened my job. I want her off my aircraft. Officer Miller, a burly man who looked like he'd rather be eating lunch, sighed. Ma'am, you need to come with us. Serena looked at the officer. Officer, I have done nothing wrong. I have a valid ticket. This flight attendant is profiling me. We can sort that out on the jet bridge. Ma'am, Officer Davis said, his hand resting near his belt. But the flight crew has the right to remove anyone they deem a threat. If you don't walk off, we have to drag you off. Don't make us do that. Serena looked around the cabin. The man in 1B, Marcus, looked down at his shoes. A woman in 2A was filming, whispering into her phone, Oh my God, I think she stole the ticket. Serena realized the optics were against her. If she fought physically, she'd go to jail. If she walked, she'd live to fight the legal battle. Fine, Serena said, her voice icy. She grabbed her blazer and her iPad. She turned to Tiffany. I want you to remember this moment, Tiffany. I want you to remember exactly how smug you feel right now, because by sunset, you're going to wish you had never stepped foot on this plane. Get off, Tiffany sneered. Serena walked down the aisle. It was a humiliating gauntlet. As she passed through business class and then the long stretch of economy to the exit door, hundreds of eyes judged her. She heard the whispers. Probably drunk. Fake credit card, I bet. She doesn't look like she belongs in first. When she reached the jet bridge, the cold air hit her. The officers escorted her out, but just as they stepped onto the tarmac side of the bridge, the aircraft door didn't close. Usually the door slams shut the second the problem is removed, but the door remained open. Inside the cockpit, Captain Richard Sterling, a veteran pilot with 30 years of experience and 4 stripes on his shoulder, was staring at the flight manifest. He had just received a text message from an old friend who worked in corporate at Nexus Dynamics. The text read, Heard Serena is on your flight. Treat her well. She just signed the deal. She owns 51% of Royal Meridian now. Captain Sterling froze. He looked at the manifest. Seat 1A, Serena Cross. Status, offloaded, security issue. His blood ran cold. He turned to his co-pilot, a younger man named David. "Did we just kick Serena Cross off this plane?" David shrugged, checking his instruments. Tiffany said some woman was refusing to verify her ticket. "Why?" Sterling didn't answer. He unbuckled his seatbelt, stood up, and threw open the cockpit door. Tiffany was in the galley, pouring a glass of champagne for Mr. Archibald, who had just been happily seated in Serena's vacant 1A spot. She looked triumphant. "Door is closing, Captain," Tiffany asked with a bright smile. "Where is the passenger from 1A?" Sterling barked. His voice wasn't the calm, captain-speaking voice. It was the voice of a man watching an engine catch fire. Tiffany blinked. "I had her removed. She was aggressive. Security took her." You had her removed?" Sterling's face went pale. "Do you know who that is?" "Some nobody with a fake ticket," Tiffany scoffed. She claimed she knew the CEO. "Tiffany," Sterling said, his voice trembling with a mix of rage and terror. "She is the CEO." Tiffany paused, the champagne bottle hovering over the glass. "What?" "The merger went through this morning," Sterling shouted, not caring who heard him. Royal Meridian was acquired by Nexus Dynamics. Serena Cross isn't just a passenger. She is the new owner of this entire airline. She signs your paycheck. The glass of champagne slipped from Tiffany's hand. It shattered on the floor, splashing expensive vintage bubbly over her pristine shoes. The first-class cabin fell dead silent. Mr. Archibald, sitting in 1A, looked terrified. "Get her back," Sterling ordered. "Get her back on this plane right now, or so help me God. None of us will ever fly again." I called the police," Tiffany stammered, her arrogance dissolving into panic. They took her to the holding cell." Captain Sterling turned to the co-pilot. "Kill the engines. We aren't going anywhere." He grabbed the cabin PA system microphone. Bing bong. "Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Sterling. I am grounding this aircraft. We have just made a catastrophic error by removing a passenger who was wrongfully accused. Until Ms. Serena Cross is returned to her seat with a full apology, this plane does not move. I apologize for the delay, but some things are more important than a schedule." He dropped the mic and looked at Tiffany. "You better pray she doesn't sue us into oblivion. Go get her." "Me?" Tiffany squeaked. "You," Sterling growled. "Run." Tiffany Gable had never run through an airport terminal before. She was accustomed to walking with the slow, gliding strut of someone who knew people were watching. But now, her heels clicked frantically against the polished terrazzo floor of Terminal 4, sending sharp echoes through the concourse. Her chest heaved. Sweat began to bead at her hairline, threatening the perfect blowout she had paid $80 for that morning. Passengers stared as she sprinted past the duty-free shops, her Royal Meridian scarf flapping wildly behind her like a surrender flag. He grounded the plane, she thought, her mind racing in circles of panic. He actually grounded the plane. In the aviation world, grounding a transatlantic flight for a non-technical reason was financial suicide. It cost the airline thousands of dollars by the minute, missed slots, fuel costs, crew timeouts. If Captain Sterling was willing to burn that kind of money, the situation wasn't just bad. It was catastrophic. She reached the nondescript door marked Airport Police, authorized personnel only located near the security checkpoint. She banged on it with her fist. Officer Miller opened it, looking annoyed. He held a half-eaten bagel. "Ms. Gable? What is it? We're processing the paperwork for your passenger." "Stop!" Tiffany gasped, pushing past him into the small, sterile holding room. "Don't process anything." The room was cold, painted a depressing shade of institutional beige. In the center sat a metal table bolted to the floor, and there sat Serena Cross. Serena didn't look like a victim. She sat with her back straight, her hands resting calmly on the table. Her phone was in front of her, recording. She looked up as Tiffany burst in, her expression unreadable. "Miss Cross," Tiffany panted, clutching a stitch in her side. You need to come back." Serena raised a single, perfectly sculpted eyebrow. "Come back? To the plane where I was publicly humiliated? To the plane where you announced to 50 people that I was a criminal?" "It was a mistake," Tiffany pleaded, her voice cracking. "There was a misunderstanding with the system. We've cleared it up. The Captain Sterling is holding the flight for you." Serena let out a low, dry chuckle. She tapped the screen of her phone. "A misunderstanding? Is that what we're calling racial profiling these days, Tiffany? You didn't check the system. You checked my skin color and decided I didn't match the upholstery." Officer Miller looked between them, confused. "Ma'am, are you dropping the charges?" "Drop them," Tiffany practically screamed at the officer. Then she turned back to Serena, lowering her voice to a desperate whisper. "Please, if you don't come back, the flight gets cancelled. 300 people will be stranded. The crew will be suspended. Please." Serena stood up slowly. She picked up her iPad and her blazer. She walked around the table until she was standing inches from Tiffany. The power dynamic had shifted violently. In the cabin, Tiffany had loomed over Serena. Here, Serena seemed 10 feet tall. "I don't care about the flight, Tiffany," Serena said softly. "I own a logistics company. I know how to move cargo. If that plane stays on the ground, I can just charter another one for myself. I don't need you." "I know who you are," Tiffany whispered, tears finally spilling over her mascara. "The captain told me. You bought the airline." "I did," Serena nodded. "And do you know what the first rule of business is, Tiffany?" Tiffany shook her head, trembling. "Asset management," Serena said cold. "You identified me as a liability. You tried to dispose of me. Now, I have to decide if you are an asset worth keeping or a liability I need to scrap." "I'm sorry," Tiffany sobbed. "I'm so sorry." "Sorry doesn't fix my reputation," Serena said. She checked her watch. "But I have a meeting in London that I cannot miss. So, I will get back on that plane." Tiffany exhaled, a sound of pure relief. "Oh, thank God. Under one condition," Serena cut her off. Tiffany froze. "Anything. You humiliated me in front of the entire cabin," Serena said. "You made sure everyone knew I was being kicked off. So when I walk back on that plane, you are going to make sure everyone knows exactly why I am returning. You will make an announcement. You will tell them that you profiled me, that you were wrong, and that you are personally apologizing. Over the PA system." Tiffany's face went pale. That kind of admission was career suicide. It was a complete loss of dignity. "Do we have a deal?" Serena asked, picking up her bag. "Or should I call my pilot to ready my private jet and leave you here to explain to corporate why you lost their new owner?" Tiffany swallowed the lump in her throat. She had no choice. "We have a deal." The walk back to the plane was a surreal reversal of the walk she had taken 20 minutes prior. This time, Tiffany didn't march ahead with authority. She walked a step behind Serena, like a servant following a queen. When they reached the gate agents, who had heard the rumors buzzing on the radio, stared wide-eyed. They parted like the Red Sea as Serena approached. Captain Sterling was waiting at the end of the jet bridge, standing right by the open aircraft door. He wasn't wearing his hat. He held it in his hands, a gesture of old-school respect. He looked furious at Tiffany, but when he turned to Serena, his expression softened into genuine remorse. "Ms. Cross," Sterling said, bowing his head slightly, "I cannot express how deeply ashamed I am of my crew's conduct today. On behalf of the entire flight deck, I apologize." Serena stopped. She liked Sterling. Her background check on the company had flagged him as a good man, a union leader who looked out for his junior pilots. "It wasn't your fault, Captain," Serena said, offering him a firm handshake. "But we have a schedule to keep. Let's get this bird in the air." "Right this way," Sterling said, gesturing inside. Serena stepped onto the plane. The atmosphere in the first-class cabin was tense. The passengers were murmuring, annoyed by the delay. Mr. Archibald Sterling, no relation to the captain, was still sitting comfortably in seat 1A, sipping the champagne Tiffany had poured him earlier. He was an older man, with a red face and a suit that cost more than Tiffany's annual salary. He looked up, annoyed, as Serena entered. "Finally," Archibald grunted. Did they sort out the stowaway? He didn't realize Serena was the one standing there. Serena didn't answer him. She just stood in the aisle, looking at him. Tiffany stepped forward, her hands shaking. She picked up the cabin interphone handset. Her hand trembled so badly the cord rattled against the wall. She keyed the microphone. Her voice would now be heard throughout the entire plane. First, business, and economy. Bing bong. The cabin went quiet. "Ladies and gentlemen," Tiffany began, her voice wavering. She looked at Serena. Serena's eyes were hard as flint. "May I have your attention, please? This is Senior Purser Tiffany Gable. A few moments ago, a passenger was removed from the aircraft under my direction. I made a severe error in judgment." Mr. Archibald looked up, confused. The lady in 2A stopped filming and started listening. "I assumed that because of—" Tiffany choked on the words, taking a deep breath. "Because of her appearance, she did not belong in the first-class cabin. I was wrong. The passenger, Ms. Serena Cross, is not only a valid ticket holder, but is also the new owner of Royal Meridian Airlines." A collective gasp swept through the cabin. Mr. Archibald dropped his complimentary warm nuts. "I profiled her," Tiffany continued, tears streaming down her face now, ruining her makeup. "I treated her with disrespect and bias. I am publicly apologizing to Ms. Cross for the humiliation I caused. I ask for her forgiveness, and yours for the delay." She clicked the receiver off and hung it up. The silence in the cabin was heavy, suffocating. Serena nodded once. Acknowledgement, not forgiveness. She turned to seat 1A. Mr. Archibald was trying to shrink into the leather. "Mr. Archibald," Serena said pleasantly, "I believe you're in my seat." I, Archibald stammered, scrambling to unbuckle his seatbelt. "They told me it was open. I didn't know." "It's not open," Serena said. "And since the flight is fully booked, I believe your original seat was in 4B. Business class?" "Yes. Yes, ma'am." Archibald gathered his things frantically, spilling a napkin on the floor. He squeezed past her, his face burning red, retreating to the business cabin behind the curtain. Serena sat down. She smoothed her trousers. She placed her iPad on the tray table. She looked up at Tiffany, who was standing over her, looking like a broken doll. "Well?" Serena asked. "Ma'am?" Tiffany whispered. "We haven't taken off yet," Serena said, her voice dropping to a terrifyingly casual tone. "But I'm thirsty. I'll take a glass of champagne, the vintage Bollinger." Tiffany blinked. She had expected to be fired on the spot. She had expected to be thrown off the plane. You want me to serve you? Unless you'd prefer to disembark now and explain to HR why you abandoned your post," Serena challenged. "I expect the service on this flight to be impeccable, Tiffany. Show me why you deserve to keep those wings." It was a crueler punishment than firing her. Serena was going to make her work the entire 7-hour flight to London, serving the woman she had tried to destroy, terrified every second that one wrong move would end her career. "Yes, Ms. Cross," Tiffany said, snapping into a robotic, fearful efficiency. "Right away, Ms. Cross." As Tiffany hurried to the galley, the captain's voice came over the speaker. "Flight attendants, prepare for cross-check and departure. Next stop, London." The engines roared to life. Serena looked out the window as the plane began to taxi. She watched the ground crew wave. She took a sip of the champagne Tiffany placed on her coaster with a trembling hand. The war was won, but the battle wasn't over. Serena knew that by the time they landed in London, the video of her being kicked off would be viral. She needed to control the narrative. But halfway across the Atlantic, something else would happen. Something Serena hadn't planned for. Because Tiffany wasn't just incompetent, she was vindictive. And while she was terrified of Serena, she was also texting her union rep from the galley, spinning a story that Serena was abusive and unstable. Tiffany was planning a mutiny upon landing. She didn't know that the man sitting in seat 2B, a quiet man in a hoodie who hadn't said a word the whole flight, was an investigative journalist, and he had recorded everything. Cruising altitude is usually the time when flight attendants relax. The meal service is done, the cabin lights are dimmed, and the passengers settle into a movie-induced stupor. But in the forward galley of Flight 404, the air was toxic. Tiffany Gable was not scrubbing the champagne stain off her shoe. Instead, she was huddled in the corner near the coffee makers with Brad, a junior flight attendant who had always looked up to her. Brad was 24, impressionable, and terrified of Tiffany. "She's unhinged, Brad," Tiffany whispered, her eyes darting toward the curtain that separated them from first class. "She forced me to make that announcement. It's workplace harassment. It's humiliation. I'm pretty sure she's drunk, too." "Did you see how much champagne she ordered?" "But she owns the airline, doesn't she?" Brad asked nervously, arranging tea bags. The captain said, "The captain is scared," Tiffany hissed. "Old men get scared of new money. But we have a union. I've already texted the rep in London. If we both file a report saying she was verbally abusive and threw a drink at me during the flight, her ownership won't matter. The board of directors hates bad PR. If the headlines say, 'New CEO abuses crew on first flight,' she'll be out before the merger ink is dry." Brad hesitated. "I don't know, Tiff. She seems quiet." "That's how sociopaths act," Tiffany lied, gripping his arm. "Look, do you want to be on the team that stood up to a tyrant? Or do you want to be scrubbing toilets on regional flights for the rest of your life? If she stays in power, she's going to fire us all anyway. We have to strike first. I need you to sign the witness statement." Brad looked at the curtain, then back at Tiffany. He nodded slowly. "Okay. I saw her. Throw a napkin at you?" "Perfect." Tiffany smiled, a cold, predatory expression. "And I'll make sure the police are waiting at Heathrow. Not for me. For her." Meanwhile, in seat 1A, Serena was trying to focus on her spreadsheet, but the atmosphere was suffocating. Every time Tiffany walked past to collect a glass or offer a hot towel, there was a jagged hostility in her movements. A glass was set down too hard. A question was asked too loudly. Serena knew the game. She had fought her way up from a warehouse dispatcher to a CEO. She knew that when people felt cornered, they didn't surrender. They plotted. She rubbed her temples, exhausted. She just wanted to get to London, fire Tiffany through the proper HR channels, and sleep for a week. "Excuse me?" The voice came from across the aisle. Serena looked up. It was the man in 2B, the guy in the hoodie. Now that he had lowered his hood, she saw he was younger than she thought, maybe early 30s, with sharp blue eyes and messy blonde hair. He held a small device in his hand. "I don't mean to bother you," he whispered, leaning across the aisle so Tiffany wouldn't hear. "But I think you should see this." Serena frowned. "Who are you?" "Liam West," he said. "I write for The Guardian, investigative desk." Serena tensed. The last thing she needed was a journalist. "Mr. West, I really don't have a comment right now." "I'm not looking for a quote," Liam interrupted softly. "I'm looking to help. I used to be a war correspondent. I know how to read a room, and I know when a coup is being staged." He slid his phone across the armrest. On the screen was a video. It was zoomed in, grainy but clear. It showed the gap in the galley curtain. It showed Tiffany gripping Brad's arm. The audio was faint over the hum of the engines, but readable. If we both file a report saying she was verbally abusive, she'll be out before the merger ink is dry. Serena watched the video, her blood running cold. She looked back at Liam. "Why are you showing me this?" she asked. "Because I hate bullies," Liam shrugged, taking his phone back. "And because I heard her call the Heathrow police on the galley landline 5 minutes ago. She told them there is a Category 2 passenger disturbance in progress. That's code for assault. She's setting you up, Ms. Cross." Serena sat back, her mind racing. Tiffany was doubling down. She was going to use the police to create a scene at Heathrow, counting on the fact that the police would believe a uniformed white flight crew over a black woman, regardless of her job title. It was a gamble, but a dangerous one. If Serena was arrested, even for an hour, the mugshot would destroy her stock price. "Thank you, Liam," Serena said, her voice steady. "Can you airdrop that to me?" "Already did," Liam smiled. "And I've got the earlier footage, too. The part where she kicked you off. It's all backed up to the cloud. You're bulletproof." Serena looked toward the galley. Tiffany was peeking through the curtain, smiling smugly. "She thinks she's won," Serena thought. "She thinks she's landing in London to watch me fall. She has no idea she's flying straight into a wall." Serena picked up the in-flight phone at her seat. She didn't dial the galley. She dialed the flight deck. "Captain Sterling," Serena said when he answered. "Ms. Cross, is everything all right?" The captain sounded anxious. "No, Captain. It seems we have a security threat on board," Serena said, loud enough for the cabin to hear. "But don't worry. We'll handle it on the ground. Just do me a favor. When we land, ask the police to bring the senior commander. I want witnesses." She hung up. Tiffany, listening from the galley, smirked. She thought Serena was bluffing. She thought Serena was the one about to be handled. The plane began its descent. The clouds over London were grey and heavy. The landing was smooth, but the taxi to the gate felt like a funeral procession. The cabin lights flickered on, harsh and bright. "Cabin crew, disarm doors and cross-check," Captain Sterling's voice announced. Usually, first-class passengers are the first to stand up. But today, nobody moved. The tension in the air was so thick it pinned them to their seats. Everyone knew something was about to happen. Tiffany Gable adjusted her scarf. She put on her best victim face. She had rehearsed her lines. She was drunk. She threw a glass. I feared for my safety. As the jet bridge connected with a heavy thud, Tiffany opened the aircraft door L1. Standing there were 4 officers from the London Metropolitan Police. Behind them stood a tall, stern woman in a trench coat, Detective Inspector Harrow. Tiffany stepped back, feigning distress. "Oh, thank goodness you're here," she said, her voice trembling theatrically. "It's been a nightmare. She's in seat 1 more. Please be careful. She threatened me." Detective Harrow didn't smile. She stepped onto the plane, her boots thudding on the floor. The 4 officers followed. Serena remained seated. She didn't stand up. She didn't shout. She simply unlocked her iPad. "Miss Cross?" Detective Harrow asked, stopping at row 1. "That's her," Tiffany pointed from the galley, emboldened by the police presence. "She's the one. She assaulted me. I have a witness." She grabbed Brad and shoved him forward. "Tell them, Brad." Brad looked at the police, then at Serena, then at Liam, who was holding up his phone, recording. Brad went pale. He couldn't do it. I didn't see anything," Brad stammered, stepping back. "Brad!" Tiffany shrieked. "You liar! You said—" "That's enough," Detective Harrow said, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. She looked at Serena. "Ms. Cross, we received a call about a disturbance. Do you have anything to say?" "I do, Detective," Serena said calmly. "But I think a video speaks louder than words." Serena turned her iPad around. She played the video Liam had recorded in the galley. The audio filled the silent cabin. "If we both file a report saying she was verbally abusive, she'll be out before the merger ink is dry." Tiffany's face drained of blood. It went past pale to a sickly shade of grey. She gasped, reaching out as if to stop the video. That's illegal. You can't record me. That's out of context." "And this?" Serena swiped to the next video, the one of Tiffany kicking her off the plane in New York, the sneering tone, the racism. "Seat 1A is reserved for our global elite. I don't see your name." Detective Harrow watched the videos in silence. When they finished, she looked up at Tiffany. The detective's expression was one of absolute disgust. "Filing a false police report is a serious offense in the United Kingdom, Miss Gable," Harrow said. "Wasting police time is another, and attempting to frame a passenger, regardless of who they are, is a criminal matter." I was just doing my job," Tiffany sobbed, backing up until she hit the galley wall. "She was aggressive. I felt threatened." "The only aggression I see," Captain Sterling said, stepping out of the cockpit, "is from you, Tiffany." The captain looked at the police. "I want this woman removed from my aircraft immediately. She has mutinied against the owner of this airline, endangered the safety of the flight by creating a hostile environment, and lied to federal authorities." Detective Harrow nodded to her officers. "Arrest her!" "What?" Tiffany screamed as the officers moved in. "No, you can't arrest me. I'm the victim. I'm the senior purser." Officer Miller, London edition, grabbed her wrists. "Tiffany Gable, you are under arrest for perverting the course of justice and making false representations to police. You do not have to say anything." The click of the handcuffs was the most satisfying sound Serena had ever heard. As they dragged Tiffany down the aisle, the same aisle she had forced Serena to walk down hours earlier, she kicked and screamed. "You can't do this. Do you know who I am? Brad, help me. Captain." But nobody helped her. The passengers in first class, who had watched the whole saga, began to clap. It started with Liam in 2B, then Mr. Archibald, who was eager to get on Serena's good side, and soon the whole cabin was applauding. Serena stood up. She walked to the door where Tiffany was being hauled out. She leaned in close, so only Tiffany could hear. "You were right about one thing, Tiffany," Serena whispered. "You said by sunset, I'd wish I never stepped foot on this plane. But the sun has set, and the only one leaving in cuffs is you. Enjoy economy class in the transport van." Tiffany screamed a curse word as she was shoved into the jet bridge. Serena straightened her blazer. She turned to Captain Sterling and Liam. "Captain, excellent flying," she said. "Liam, thank you for the truth." "Any time," Liam smiled. "This is going to be a hell of a story." "Make sure you spell my name right," Serena said. She grabbed her bag and walked off the plane. She had a company to run, and the first item on her agenda was a complete overhaul of the hiring process. But the story wasn't quite over, because while Tiffany was gone, The culture that created her was still there. And Serena Cross was just getting started cleaning house. London was weeping. A relentless grey drizzle coated the windows of the black SUV as it navigated the congestion of the financial district. Inside the vehicle, the silence was heavy, broken only by the rhythmic swishing of the windshield wipers. Serena Cross sat in the back seat, staring at the looming glass spire of the Royal Meridian headquarters. It was a monolith of steel and ego, piercing the low clouds. Beside her, Liam West was scrolling through his tablet, his face illuminated by the blue light of the screen. "It's trending again," Liam murmured, breaking the silence. The hashtag #BoycottRoyalMeridian has 2 million uses, but Team Serena has 5 million. The public is with you, Serena. They want blood. Serena adjusted the cuff of her navy blazer. It was sharper than armor. Public opinion is fickle, Liam. It burns hot and fast. Today they love me because I'm the underdog who took down a bully. Tomorrow, they'll forget. That's why I can't rely on hashtags. I need something permanent. She looked down at the leather briefcase resting on her knees. It was heavy, not just with paper, but with the fate of a legacy. "Are you sure about the intel?" she asked, her voice betraying a rare flicker of doubt. Liam smirked, locking his tablet. "I used to track arms dealers in the Sudan, remember? Finding the hidden financial rot of 12 pompous British aristocrats was practically a vacation. The dossiers are solid. They're swimming in debt, Serena, all of them." The car pulled up to the curb. A swarm of paparazzi was already camped outside the revolving doors, their camera flashes popping like lightning storms. "Showtime," Serena whispered. The boardroom on the 50th floor was a sanctuary of old-world power. It smelled of lemon polish, expensive cologne, and stagnation. The walls were lined with oil paintings of former chairmen, all white, all male, all staring down with disapproving glares. 12 men and 1 woman sat around the massive mahogany table. This was the old guard, the board of directors who had run Royal Meridian as their personal country club for decades. At the head of the table sat Charles Vanderbilt. He was a man who looked like he had been born in a 3-piece suit. His silver hair was perfectly coiffed, and his face was set in a mask of polite disdain. When Serena entered, the room did not go silent. It went cold. She didn't wait to be announced. She pushed the heavy double doors open and walked in, her heels striking the hardwood floor with a rhythmic, military precision. Behind her walked Liam and a team of 4 corporate lawyers, looking like sharks in Italian wool. "You're late," Charles Vanderbilt said, not bothering to stand. He checked his gold Patek Philippe watch with a theatrical sigh. "We expected you 10 minutes ago, Ms. Cross." "I was busy," Serena replied, her voice cool and level. She walked to the opposite end of the table and took the empty seat, claiming the space. "I had to ensure the new anti-discrimination protocols were being implemented across all global hubs. It seems the previous administration left quite a mess to clean up." A ripple of annoyance went through the room. A board member named Preston, a man with a red face and a history of gout, slammed his hand on the table. "We are not here to discuss protocols, young lady," Preston spat. "We are here to discuss the absolute circus you have turned this company into. Do you have any idea what it's like to have the police storming our aircraft? It's vulgar." "Justice is often messy, Preston," Serena countered, opening her water bottle. "But it is necessary." Charles Vanderbilt stood up. He smoothed his tie, signaling that the pleasantries were over. "Serena," he began, his voice taking on a patronizing, grandfatherly tone that was far more insulting than shouting. "Let's be frank. You bought this airline on a whim. You have capital, yes, but you lack breeding. You lack the temperament required to steer a legacy carrier. You reacted emotionally to a personnel issue. You made it personal. I made it public, Serena corrected him. There is a difference. Regardless, Charles continued, waving his hand dismissively, the board has convened in an emergency session this morning. We have reviewed the bylaws. Specifically, we have reviewed Clause 14 of the Royal Meridian Charter. Serena's expression didn't change, but she saw the smirk tugging at the corner of Preston's mouth. They had a trap. Clause 14, Charles read from a document, savouring every word. In the event that a chief executive officer displays conduct unbecoming of the brand or reckless behaviour that endangers the company's stock value, the board may vote to strip them of operational power immediately. He looked up, his eyes gleaming with triumph. We have taken a vote, Serena. It was unanimous. As of this moment, you are removed as CEO. You will retain your equity, of course. We aren't thieves. But you will have no say in the day-to-day operations. Jonathan Hayes has agreed to return as interim CEO to stabilize the ship. The room exhaled. The tension seemed to break. The board members leaned back in their chairs, exchanging looks of relief. They had done it. They had put the aggressive woman back in her place. So, Charles smiled, pointing to the door. If you would please vacate the premises, security will escort you out. Serena didn't move. She didn't look shocked. She didn't look angry. She looked bored. She slowly unscrewed the cap of her water bottle, took a sip, and set it down. Clause 14, Serena repeated thoughtfully. A powerful tool, designed to protect the company from rogue elements. But you missed a subsection, Charles. Charles frowned. I assure you, our legal counsel has been thorough. Subsection C, Serena said, signaling to her lead lawyer. The lawyer stepped forward and placed a heavy stack of red folders on the table. Clause 14 requires a unanimous vote. However, the bylaws state that a unanimous vote is defined as a vote by all solvent and eligible board members. A member who is currently in a state of personal insolvency or bankruptcy is ineligible to cast a vote on company matters to prevent conflict of interest. We are all solvent, Preston scoffed. We are the wealthiest men in London. This is absurd. Is it? Serena asked. She slid the first red folder down the long table. It spun across the polished wood and stopped right in front of Charles Vanderbilt. Charles, Serena said, her voice dropping an octave, you live a very expensive life. The estate in Surrey, the villa in Tuscany, the yacht. It requires a lot of liquidity. Liquidity you haven't had since your bad bets on the lithium market 3 years ago. Charles went pale. That is private financial information. It was private, Serena corrected. Until you leveraged your assets to cover the losses. You took out a bridge loan of £40 million from a private equity firm in Zurich, a firm called Obsidian Holdings. Charles stared at her. How do you know that? Because Nexus Dynamics acquired Obsidian Holdings yesterday morning, Serena said, leaning forward. I own your debt, Charles. I own the note on your house. I own the mortgage on this building. Technically, as of 9:00 a.m. today, you are in default. You are bankrupt. A pin drop could have been heard in the room. Charles slumped into his chair, looking like a marionette whose strings had been cut. Serena didn't stop. She turned her gaze to Preston. Preston, you enjoy the tables in Monaco a bit too much, don't you? You have outstanding markers at 3 casinos. £2 million. I bought those debts too. She pointed to the woman at the end of the table. Lady Margaret, your husband's construction firm is under investigation for tax fraud. The banks froze your assets last week. You are insolvent. Serena stood up, walking slowly around the table, her hand trailing along the backs of their expensive leather chairs. She was the predator now. I spent the last 72 hours buying every distressed asset, every loan, and every bad bet this board has made in the last decade, Serena said softly. I didn't just buy the airline, gentlemen. I bought you. She returned to the head of the table, standing over Charles Vanderbilt. He looked old now, defeated. So, Serena said, her voice ringing with authority. Since every single person at this table is currently financially compromised to a massive degree, your vote on Clause 14 is null and void. You are ineligible. What do you want? Charles whispered, his voice trembling. Are you going to ruin us? Put us on the street? I could, Serena admitted. I could call in these debts right now. I could seize your homes. I could leak these files to the press and destroy your reputations forever. She paused, letting the threat hang in the air like a guillotine blade. But I have a business to run, and I don't like clutter. She gestured to the lawyers, who began distributing resignation letters to each member. Here is the deal, Serena said. You will all sign these letters of resignation immediately. You will cite health reasons or a desire to retire. You will walk out of this building and never set foot in the aviation industry again. In exchange, I will restructure your debts. I will give you favorable repayment terms. I will let you keep your dignity. She pulled a pen from her pocket and clicked it. But if you hesitate, if even one of you refuses, I destroy everything. Right now. Preston was the first to break. He grabbed the pen with a shaking hand and scribbled his signature. Then Lady Margaret. Then the others. The sound of scratching pens filled the room, the sound of the old guard dying. Finally, only Charles Vanderbilt remained. He looked up at Serena, tears of humiliation welling in his eyes. This was my father's company, he choked out. And now it's mine, Serena said cold. Sign the paper, Charles. He signed. Get out, Serena ordered. They scrambled for the doors, clutching their briefcases, fleeing the room like rats, escaping a sinking ship. When the doors finally closed, leaving the room silent, Liam let out a long, low whistle. He walked over to the minibar and poured 2 glasses of scotch. Remind me never to play poker with you, Liam said, handing her a glass. His hands were shaking slightly from the adrenaline. I don't play poker, Liam, Serena said, walking to the floor-to-ceiling window. She looked out at the London skyline, the rain clearing to reveal a patch of blue sky. I play chess, and I hate losing. 6 months later. The air at Heathrow Terminal 5 felt different, lighter. Serena Cross walked through the concourse, checking the operations on her way to the gate. She wasn't hidden behind security guards. She was walking among the passengers. The walls, once covered in stiff, corporate advertising, now featured vibrant murals of the diverse crew that actually ran the airline. She approached Gate 42. Flight 404 to New York was boarding. Captain Sterling was standing at the podium, looking 5 years younger. The stress lines around his eyes had softened. When he saw Serena, he broke into a genuine grin. "Miss Cross," he called out, waving a manifest. "Right on time. We've got a tailwind today. We should land early." "Good to hear, Captain." Serena smiled, handing her boarding pass to the gate agent, a young man with a nose ring who treated her with easy respect, not fear. As she stepped onto the plane, the difference was palpable. The crew wasn't stiff or terrified. They were laughing, helping passengers with bags, working as a team. A new senior purser, a woman named Elena, with kind eyes and braids, greeted her at the door. "Welcome back, Miss Cross," Elena said warmly. "Seat 1A is ready for you. But the crew was wondering, if you're not too tired, would you like to join us in the galley for a coffee once we reach cruising altitude?" We have the new blend you suggested. Serena looked at the seat, the infamous seat 1A, where the war had started. Then she looked at the galley, where the community was. "I'd love that, Elena," Serena said. She sat down and buckled her belt. She pulled out her phone. A news alert popped up. Former Royal Meridian Director Charles Vanderbilt sells estate, moves to quiet retirement in the countryside. Serena swiped the notification away. That was the past. The engines roared to life, a powerful, ascending sound. Serena Cross looked out the window as the ground fell away. She wasn't just a passenger anymore, and she wasn't just a CEO. She was the pilot of her own destiny, and for the first time in her life, the sky wasn't the limit. It was just the beginning. Wow. I told you karma hits hard, but I don't think anyone expected Serena to buy the personal debt of the entire board of directors. That is what I call a boss move. She literally bought the men who tried to fire her. If you enjoyed this story of justice, revenge, and high-flying drama, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow and tells YouTube you want more stories like this. And listen, if you've ever been underestimated or judged by someone who didn't know your worth, let me know in the comments below. Type "I am the CEO" in the comments to claim your own victory this week. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell notification so you never miss a part. I'll see you in the next story. Stay safe and keep flying high.